Thank you guys for joining the breakdown NZCFL. And we're first going to start with, on our first podcast, is going to be the preseason favorites and the top 10 preseason. And I'm going to go through the strengths, weaknesses, and what players can we expect to make playmakers and make a difference on each team. Let's first start with Northwestern. This is the best offensive line I've seen in Big Ten, maybe in NZCFL history. 587 overall offensive linemen, including 2 in the 90s. Absolute monster unit there pictured. And you can't say enough about their tight end in the game. Justin Tabor is going to be a beast. The third highest rated player in the conference, tied for the highest overall rating in the entire nation. And you really can't say enough about the offensive line going to carry them. And as I'll go into later, their quarterback will be something special this year. Next, we're going to go into Ohio State. Always good, and with Coach Don there now, we'll see what they can do with this very balanced, deep defensive unit. Coach, their running back, I think that's how you say it. He's a 91 overall. Dude looks like he could be a beast behind the offensive line. The second best offensive line I've seen in a while with this Ohio State team. Very good. Chapman also at wide receiver. This offense could be very scary. And if Don wants to compete with Michigan and compete with these other Big Ten schools like Western and these experienced coaches in the Big Ten, him being experienced himself, but he's going to have those two players be key factors on his offense. The defense very balanced, not a ton of superstars, but one of the most depth in the Big Ten itself. Next, we'll go over UCLA, the first team in the pack, as we have 3 Pac-10 teams and 4 Big Ten teams on this list. Very heavy in those conferences this year, and I think one of those teams will come out with a national championship, as I'll state later. UCLA, though, as we go more in depth on them, they have 290 overall wide receivers, the most balanced offense, I think, most balanced team in general. However, their lack of secondary help in the Pac-12 could hurt them a lot, and I think that's the biggest reason why I don't have them taking that step over Northwestern and Ohio State, even though Ohio State is the most talented team. Northwestern has the experience, and they won the national championship last year. I have UCLA at 3, slotting right at that spot just because of their elite offense, but their lack of linebacker depth and cornerback depth can really hurt them. And I'm saying that because that's one of my things I want to work on as a coach at USC, being able to expose UCLA in that rating right there. Hopefully San Diego State can do the same, and one of us will come out with the conference championship. Next, we move on to San Diego State, the team I just mentioned. The only reason I do not have San Diego State over UCLA is because right now they have a quarterback controversy. Kingsbury or McAllister. I don't know which one's going to start yet. They're both around 85 overall. Kingsbury is a little bit younger. He's a sophomore compared to McAllister's being a junior. And there's not a lot of stars on this team. There's not a lot of stars. I think UCLA has a more star-studded team. San Diego State's more balanced, but I just prefer UCLA at this point. I could see later in the season it's shaking this up a little bit. But both these teams are going to be competing in the pack, and both these teams most likely will make playoffs because of how elite talent they have. It's just, who do you really want to slot in their 3 and 4 spot? Next, we go into Auburn. This is the hardest one. Auburn is the best team in the SEC by far. It's not close. The SEC's fallen off. Everyone knows that. The problem with this is they just don't have a lot of playmakers. Not a lot of elite talent, which you normally see in the SEC. That's the most surprising thing to me. They have so much depth, but a lack of playmakers. They're still pretty young, and it's very hard to see this Auburn team making it the championship with this unit. I really like their team. I think they have a lot of depth. I think they're a really star-studded team. They're a really good team, but they're not very star-studded. And I could see them next year being a true contender and being a top 2 or 3 team, where I think after 4 right now, there's a big jump from 4 to 5. I think there's another step right there where you take down. That's where I see them starting to have issues. Like, as I'll go through, I think Auburn, Michigan, Army, Rice, USC, Michigan, those are all very good teams, but I don't think they have the issues of depth and can control how much how good they are as much as those top 4. I think those 4 are the best teams by far, and then there's another level down. We'll go into Michigan next. Right away off Michigan, best running backs in the nation. Atlanta, Georgia, 93 overall, top running back in the entire nation. They also have Brian Farrell, who's tied for third as the best running back in the NFL at a 90. These guys are going to be a beast of a unit. And I think, later I'll show you guys, also, I have Michigan as a Heisman favorite, but it's actually not these running backs. So Michigan, very star-studded. However, as you look on their defense, so many holes, so much lack of depth. After you get into those starters, you really just see all the weaknesses that Michigan has. You really see lack of linebacker help, lack of safety help, lack of cornerback. You literally see one or two players that could maybe help them out. But after those 3, 4, and those players get tired, it's going to be really hard for me to see Michigan getting deep in these games, these Big Ten play, this gritty play, and coming out with a win. Next, let's get on to Army. They have the most defense, the best depth on offense in the entire nation. And then I also think that Knight, being a true freshman, is going to be the second best running back, just behind Atlanta, Georgia. He's a true freshman, 91 overall. I have him as a Heisman favorite. No, I think everyone does at this point. True freshman behind a beastly offensive line at Army. Plays in the USA, has a great chance to be one of the best players in the entire nation as a true freshman. Book it right now. I have him as my Heisman favorite going into the season. The only problem is, can Carter get it done at Army? That's the biggest problem. He's a 75 overall. I think if Army had a better quarterback, they could be number 2 on this list. Their biggest weakness, quarterback. That's all it is. Secondary depth, it's all right. It could be better. But I see this Army team potentially making playoffs. Very good chance to beat Rice is here also. Next, we head to Rice. We talk about Rice now. They have the most playmakers I've seen on an offense before. Burnett, Burton, Kemp, Brown, Williams, Gonzalez. Gonzalez on their bench. He's an 86 overall tight end. This team is star-studded. But the problem is when you have all those star-studded offensive players, you lack scholarships on defense, and their defensive side is so weak, including their defensive line. And when you get into that Rice-Army matchup, you really start to see, can Knight expose Rice by himself in this offensive line? Because their defensive line is so weak. I could see Army really making Rice work for that win and potentially beating them, because I do have them one spot ahead. And I think Army, because of that, has a small advantage. Even with some of Army's flaws, I still think they're a tick above Rice just because of that. Next, we go into USC. My own team. I think USC is a great team. However, I do have them outside of that top 8, right on the edge of playoffs. Here's the thing. I've never been able to get it done. So I can't put myself in the top 8 when I've said, I'm going to win the conference. I'm going to go out there, make playoffs. I made playoffs twice. I've only done it twice in my 14-year career. So I can't really put myself up in these top categories with these top elite coaches until I get it done. So that's one of my things. My other thing is, I'm starting a true freshman. Team's extremely young. Freshman, sophomore. Every single player except for 4. 4 upperclassmen. That's a problem. A lot of young players. It also is good for the future. I'm going to have 18 juniors next year. So a lot of going next year. However, I do have the best defensive line in the nation at USC. A 92, a 90, an 88, an 85, and an 82. If you remember a few years back, Michigan had that great defensive line. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember they didn't make playoffs with that defensive line. So, just because you have that defensive line doesn't always mean you're going to be the best team in the nation. Jerry Jones might have been a steal in CPR. He's an 85 overall kicker. He was actually a linebacker as an 80, but I converted him to kicker. He has both traits, and so that's going to be great for the USC offense. And also, the lack of defensive depth is going to hurt my team. That's what I'm using my scholarships on next year is going to be defensive help. But this year, that's my biggest flaw, I think, on the defensive side. So last we go into Western Michigan. Here's the thing about Western Michigan. I don't think they're a top 10 talented team, but Coach Nick is the best coach in the league. That's my feeling about him, okay? He's the best coach in the league, has the most experience, turned Western Michigan into a perennial great team. They have a weak offense this year, but they have an elite defense. And in the Big Ten, that's what you need. You need an elite defense. If their linebacker unit, who is the best in the nation, I believe, maybe second, but he's very high up there in linebacker unit. I think this team can be carried to a Big Ten championship. However, I don't think they'll get it done because I think that Northwestern team is too good. But next, we will go into our Heisman favorites. We have Donald Burnett. He's a junior running back from Rice. I think he's very good. However, I don't think Rice's offensive line is as good as some of these other teams, and I think that's going to kind of hurt him. So that's why I do not have him as that. That's why I do not have him personally as my number one. My number one is Martin Knight. This dude is going to be a beast. He's a true freshman. He had a great offensive line. And he kind of is a shaky quarterback, so it means they're going to have to rely on the run. So they're going to have to go hard at the run. He's probably going to get a ton of playing time. Dude's a beast. Next year, he might be the best player in the NZCFL. So look out for him. Jonathan Elm. So this dude is not the highest. He's actually the lowest overall player on this list. Sorry, he's the second lowest overall. James Cobb is slightly lower, but I'll get into that later. He's a junior at Michigan. However, Michigan quarterbacks just kind of seem to make it in there. I don't know why. Michigan quarterbacks just seem to be on the edge of the Heisman, and I think Jonathan Elm will be no different. Dude's still elite, has a great offensive line, some decent wide receivers, and a decent tight end. He'll be good next year, and I think he could be an Heisman favorites. Next we need James Cobb. Here is my most controversial one. He's an 82 overall. However, the dude's a beast. He has very good stats and an offensive line unit that is the best in the nation. He's able to pass, he's able to run, do whatever he wants to be on the offensive line, and that's why he's on this list. He might be a sleeper, but he's the guy that I kind of think could pull it out if Northwestern goes on a run. Lastly, Warren Morales. If you know me as a coach, I've always loved running the ball a lot, and I think Warren Morales is going to get a lot of touches through the air, and also get a lot of catches just how the system I run. So Warren Morales be on a really good offensive line that I've assembled over the last 2 years, and I think he could be a Heisman favorite. Kind of a dark horse still. I think the bottom three are more dark horses, where Donald Burnett and Martin King are more your elite guys right now at the top. So yeah, and also Warren Morales playing against a lot of good teams this year. So it's going to be very hard for him to make a candidate, but we'll see. Next, we go into conference championship predictions. The Big Ten, I just see Northwestern winning. Experience winning it. Came off a national championship last year. Absolute beast of an offensive line, like I've said multiple times. And I think Northwestern gets it done in the Big Ten. The Pac, San Diego State. I think San Diego State can pull this off. I don't know why. I don't have enough confidence in myself to pick USC right now. I think next year is definitely our year. But I have San Diego State winning it this year. I think they're going to go to the playoffs, make a deep playoff run. San Diego State. Top 5 team in the nation. They're going to solidify themselves in the pack, be the number 1 team. Auburn, SEC, they're the best team. It's not close. Georgia's there. Some other teams are there. Texas A&M's fall off in death. It happened. They're 55th in talent. Auburn's going to win the SEC this year. USA, I have Army, and just for one reason, Knight. He's a beast. I think he runs to that weak defensive line, and Army pulls down the USA. Next, we had the ACC. This was the hardest decision I had to make. North Carolina, Notre Dame. And it comes down to this. I think Notre Dame is going to be clutch. I think they're going to pull it out. I think this will be a very close game. Could be game day. It's going to be a edge of playoffs matchup that determines who wins the ACC and who has the playoffs, I think. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a game I cannot wait to watch. Big 12, I have Baylor. What can you say? They're up to like 14th in talent, 12th in talent. It's crazy. I mean, it's just how this man works. I mean, Baylor is beastly. Baylor is going to be one of the best teams for the next upcoming years. That's all it takes. This is my sleeper pick because the Sun Belt. I think Kansas is actually the 3rd highest talent ranking in the Sun Belt. But it's Kansas. I don't know. They just win stuff. They're like 40th in talent. I know Missouri, I think it's in the Sun Belt. Maybe not. But I know they were pretty hard up there. Or the smaller teams. But I just like Kansas. They're my sleeper pick for the conference, and I think they pull out. American, we're going to South Florida. They're up into like the upper echelon of the 25th talent in the entire nation. beastly team, starting to really recruit well, taking over that Florida pipeline. Could even take over the entire Florida area if they can really get a stronghold over that area, and that would be really cool for their team. Mountain West, Montana State is kind of like a throw up. I think the Mountain West is the worst conference right now in the entire league. Not a lot of coaches, not a lot of activity. I got Montana State, so I'm going to say. Matt got Western Kentucky, rising coach, rising team. I'm happy for them. Going to win a MAC this year, 100%, just because I picked them. But yeah, thanks for joining me on the first ever breakdown NZCFL. And we'll be back for the first week. Hopefully, we'll have a post AA and a pre-recruiting special where I do some crystal balls on some players. Thank you guys for joining.